Hey, it's Lula Anderson and welcome back to the channel. If you didn't know, I uploaded a video today because yesterday I couldn't do that because of load shedding. And it's going to be the topic that I'm going to talk about today. Load shedding, Eskom, blah, blah, blah. So if you want to catch the latest episode, you can just go to the card. I think it should be up here, if I'm not mistaken, or the other side, like I don't know. So you'll just click on one of the cards here and you'll just check out yesterday's video. So today's topic is going to be very interesting because, as you know, like I'm a person that calls out racism all the time. Like if I see a racist incident, I'll call it out because like it's pretty unfair that we have to live in such a society where we are still experiencing racism, and apartheid ended like almost 30 years ago, but we're still experiencing that. Even in other countries, you know, Europe, Europe, I've talked about Europe so many times, and the racism that black people face in Europe. Black people, please don't go to Europe. Please do not go to Europe, no matter what. Like, unless maybe you're going there for a surgery, like something like life-threatening. But if it's for vacation, you want to go there, see the places, you're going to visit a friend, don't go to Europe, no matter what. Because last time I spoke about the racist incident whereby, you know, when you go to UK, you have to write an Afrikaans test. And okay, Afrikaans is the third most spoken language in South Africa, but I mean, they could have chosen any other language because only Boer people can speak Afrikaans very well. You know, other white people who are maybe British from Australia, they can't really speak Afrikaans, or maybe Indian, or even black people who went to a multiracial school, they can't really speak Afrikaans all that well. They can understand it, but, you know, they can't really speak on it. So, but anyways, today's topic is going to be about UJ. Some researchers at UJ, they had this other research they did. So basically on the research, they were talking about, you know, how Eskom is racist. Basically, they are saying that the load shedding that we are having, it's planned, that they need to, you know, attack Soweto or any black neighborhoods where there are black people. And I have to say, I kind of find that ridiculous. But anyways, let's just hear them what they have to say. There's a professor from UJ, I forgot his name, but he's going to talk about how he feels about the racism in Eskom. You know, they're targeting black people, which I haven't really seen. But anyways, let's roll the clip.
One of the things that the report that has been compiled by the department looks at load reduction. And you are calling it a racist policy that is targeting black areas. Talk to us about why you've decided to title it this.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. As you know, academic researchers, you know, they interview people, but they also theorize and conceptualize what they find, which makes it a science. So they also come up with concepts which are most appropriate to describe or define, you know, the phenomenon which we find. So we felt that the concept of energy racism is the appropriate one, basically because it looks like in South Africa, the black working class are bearing the burden, the biggest burden of the electricity crisis.
So on this research, right, they said that they actually asked people in the township, like, I mean, like, what kind of stats are these? How do you actually trust someone who's being affected by the problem? Why can't you, like, get, like, a spreadsheet that actually shows areas that have been affected by load shedding? Because if you interview people here at Ekasi in Soweto, they will tell you that, it's unfair. Like, it's unfair. Like, I've experienced it, right? Last year, I think I didn't have electricity for like 6 months, if it's not 7 months. So basically, when I moved in where I live right now, you know, a month or two later, they had this other problem with their electricity. Basically, they needed to dig into someone's yard to actually fix the problem. Because here at Soweto, like, most of the time, people actually fix their own electricity. When there's a problem with the, you know, electrical box that we are having, they go fix it themselves. So they were stuck. They had no choice but to call Eskom. When Eskom got here, he checked like every household if we were paying electricity. Like, if you hadn't been buying electricity, at least 300 rand worth of electricity a month, they would cut your electricity and they will tell you that you need to pay 6,500. And that's basically what happened. So a lot of households didn't have electricity. So at the end of the day, we would think that it's unfair, but we were not paying for the electricity. So everyone will think it's unfair if they are cut off from the electricity, especially for 6 months. I mean, 6 months, 7 months in the middle of winter, no electricity.
And when we look at then the issue of load reduction, because there's load shedding, and now we've seen in townships as well a timetable being introduced around load reduction, and some have, called this unlawful, saying it's illegal of Eskom. At the same time, there is, of course, those who are saying they have no choice. Eskom has no choice. It has to happen. What did you find from the residents around this?
Yes. So we've got load shedding, which affects everyone. And then we've got load reduction, which is targeted at black working class areas, townships, shack settlements, rural villages. So in other words, when the Eskom grid, the system, cannot cope with the load, the people who are denied electricity, who are cut off, are those who live in what I can call former black working class areas.
So, okay, she raised the point that most people are not paying for the electricity. And that's very conclusive because most Sowetans don't pay electricity. So as I said, that when Eskom came to my area, most of the people, if not all, were not paying for the electricity, right? And they have to replace very expensive equipment. Because my neighbors on the other side, there's a block where, like, I think maybe 50 houses or maybe it's 100 houses, they don't have electricity as we speak right now. It's been happening since last year, August. So when Eskom went there, there was a damage to, the, I don't know what to call it, transformer or power box or whatever. So their transformer blew up. And when Eskom got there, that thing cost like millions. So how is Eskom going to pay for that if the people who are living in that area are not even paying for electricity? That's why it's so frustrating, because in the past, when the time I was living in Meadowlands, right? So we would have a lot of electric problems because a lot of people would fix their own electricity on the transformer and stuff. So Eskom would just come in, fix it, replace it overnight. Like, they would just come in and just replace the whole thing. So I think Eskom was like, nah, man, we are tired of this. Because they would come and fix it, no problem. But there was a moment, like last year, same time last year, I think it's maybe last year, I'm not really sure. In Meadowlands, there's an area where they didn't have electricity for like 7 months because of the same thing. So they had to collect money from each household and actually, to get Eskom to come in and actually fix the problem. So when they're saying that Eskom is racist, how is it racist? Do you know how many informal settlements are there? There are so many informal settlements where people have been living there. Eskom would just come in and provide them with the electricity. Even in the area that I'm living at, so there was a place whereby it was an informal settlement, a squatter camp. Those people were living there for the longest time, but that area was owned by the bank. So those people had electricity there, but they were removed with the electricity. So there are too many informal settlements, because if it was the apartheid government, trust me, they wouldn't put electricity in informal settlements. There's another informal settlement that's coming up right now. They have electricity. Like, even in Tembisa was like a huge informal settlement, but they got electricity at the end of the day. So how can you say Eskom is racist? If they were really racist, dude, if you were not paying, they would shut down the electricity, because there are so many people in Soweto right now who have meters for electricity, but they have been bridging the whole thing. So they get free electricity. And that's what happens, because in some areas in Soweto, you might find that you're paying more electricity because your neighbors are bridging the electricity. So how can you really conclude that Eskom is racist while we are having so many problems in Soweto?
I'm keen to find out, though, on the other side of the coin, some have said that Eskom has no option but to resort to this. And Eskom has said it's also trying to offload pressure on its system. And municipalities in some areas are saying that this is done because there's some who are simply not paying for electricity. And thus they're putting pressure on the system. So they have no choice but to then implement load reduction in some of these areas. I'm keen to hear your take on that.
Yes, that is why we came up with this concept of energy racism, because there are continuities with the past of injustice, where black people always get less, where black people are scapegoated and blamed for problems of a system which they did not create. So, for example, black areas proportionally use very little power. But when it comes to balancing the system, they are the first ones to get cut-offs.
Okay, now this is the reason you can't be throwing out the race card everywhere you go. You can't just say everything is racist, because Dr. Ngwane is even struggling to actually substantiate his claims of saying that Eskom is racist, because the only thing I would say is racist is, right now we are poor because of apartheid. That is the only thing. But Eskom being directly racist is kind of dodgy, because, as I said, people at the moment, they are bridging, like they are using electricity without even paying for it, or buying electricity but it has more units than it's supposed to, And then there are people who are stealing cables. So how can Eskom really provide enough electricity for someone if they are missing cables? We also have a crime problem. And the other problem we have is that people who don't pay for electricity at all. But thankfully, Eskom right now has installed meters where you need to buy a voucher and actually insert electricity into your house. So now there was a racist incident, clear racist incident. There was a student, Stellenbosch. He went into the dorm or the room of a black student, and he actually urinated on top of his books and laptop. And when a student woke up, the black student, and started recording him, the white student said, "This is what we do to black boys." So that is obvious and conclusive and straightforward racist, So you can't just say anything is racist just for the sake of it, and you can't really substantiate, because there's overt racism. We know about that. When someone says, "Oh, you are BLM, you are woke," such things, your people, we don't deal with your kind of people, so that person is racist, right? So we cannot really conclusively say that it's really racist if it's not really 100%. We need something to be 100% these days, because white supremacists are very clever with their racism. They don't really say that they're racist straight up, except for this instance, which is really rare for someone to actually admit they're racist. There was another racist incident that happened in the UK. Basically, when you went to the UK, they gave you an Afrikaans test. And most black people don't speak Afrikaans. We don't even understand it, because I learned Afrikaans, I think, until grade 5. So I kind of know a few words here and there, basic words, to get by. Near bus, what is this, or whatever. I can't even speak Afrikaans all that well. I just know a few words, So now, in the UK, they would want you to write that test in Afrikaans. And most, even white people, even Indian people, they cannot really speak Afrikaans all that well, because the two predominant people who speak Afrikaans are colored people and actually the Boer, the Afrikaner. So that's kind of racist, because that they only want colored people and Afrikaner people to actually go to the UK. That's obvious racism. I don't think that Eskom is blatantly racist.
So how then do you propose that this be dealt with? Because we do know that there are people that have connected illegally onto the system and are not paying for their electricity. At the same time, this comes at the expense of those who are paying for electricity and are finding themselves on the back foot here. So how then does the issue and the culture of non-payment become addressed in order to ensure that that is dealt with?
The culture of non-payment is another racist code term where, the struggle against apartheid, where people were boycotting, is now invoked and used to attack, black working class areas. If you live in Soweto, whether rich or poor, middle class or working class, whether you pay or you don't pay for electricity, when load reduction comes, you don't have electricity. So in a way, this is a blanket punishment for all those who live in black working class areas. So it's not a question of people are not paying. It's not a question of it's illegal. It's not a question of it's overcrowded. It's a question of targeting vulnerable, poor, powerless, black working class areas just because the authorities, just because Eskom can get away with it.
You know, like, I really hate debunking black people if they're saying they're experiencing racism, right? But I tend to be more logical in the things that I do. I'm not really emotional, you know. If there's a racist incident, it's clear racism. So he's saying that, okay, you can't really associate black people with theft. Yeah, that's kind of that's kind of 50-50, because most black people in South Africa are black, so chances are criminals will be black, right? And most poor people in South Africa are black, so chances are theft and all those things will be from black people. And also we're having a problem of illegal immigration, and most illegal immigrants, when they come to South Africa, they have nothing, right? Which means they resort to the most craziest and heinous crimes. So if he's saying that black people, you know, it's a propaganda machine that says, you know, black people are associated with crime, I would have to disagree. We are poor because of apartheid. Our parents were not educated. So since we are poor, we will do most of the crime. But I'll admit one thing, right? In Soweto, there's little to no violent crime. Like, crime is minimal. Like, literally no crime. And you know how we deal with crime? Community justice. If you don't know what community justice is, just Google it. So basically that's what we do. We'll deal with crime ourselves. It's quite rare for people to open cases, because you know when you do a crime, you're not going to jail. The community will deal with you.
Dr. Ngwane, we've seen another very concerning issue emerging in some of the townships. Of course, this is the issue of cable theft, which and also a lack of infrastructure and management as well in some of the areas. How much of an impact has this had on communities, and do you think that the officials are dealing with it correctly? Because we keep on hearing about cable theft almost weekly now.
Yes. So cable theft, you know, where will the thief steal the cable? Even if the thief lives in an informal settlement or in a township, he or she will go around finding cable he or she can steal. It might be in the suburbs, it might be in industrial areas, it might be in the township. So this is what I mean. There's a propaganda which associates black people with things like cable theft, non-payment, you know, poverty. Of course, you know, if you're black, you tend to be poor. But, you know, it's an unfair and it's a clear example of what I'm talking about racism and scapegoating. Cable theft occurs anywhere and everywhere. I don't know why Eskom and the ANC government associates it with black areas. It's unfair and it's racist.
So in conclusion, I don't think Eskom is racist. In fact, they're not even capable of being racist, right? Even though there are black people who are racist against, you know, their own kind. Like, for example, Obama, he was a black president, but he didn't do anything, you know, to protect black people from white supremacy. You know, there were, you know, boys who were getting killed on the street by cops, and he didn't actually punish those race soldiers. He didn't actually do anything directly for black people. So you might say the same thing for Eskom. Maybe it's sabotaging black people. Maybe we are having more load shedding than we are supposed to. But it's really illogical, right? Because many households in Soweto, they have like people who are renting, right? You might have like 4 or 5 rooms that are renting outside. So obviously there would be more pressure on the grid. So in the suburbs, mostly they're not having tenants that are renting. So you probably find one household that's actually using the electricity. He also said something that, okay, it's proportional. I mean, like, Soweto is the most, you know, I would say, what do they call it? Condensed. We are so many in one place. So it's quite logical that we would have more load shedding. Because like in one area, like, I mean, one house, like there are also tenants outside, you know, in the rooms. Or even a family, we have mixed families. You know, someone wakes up in the morning, boils a kettle of water. Maybe there are like 10 kettle of boiled water that you need to actually, for everyone to actually bath. So that's more load shedding. So mostly in the suburbs where white people live, you probably find a person living alone. Maybe it's just a couple that have one kid. It's mostly like that. So we can't really say it's racist. We can't really conclude that it's racist because there are so many things that can lead to the load shedding. As I said, we are so many in Soweto, in a small area. There are so many squatter camps. There are so many people who are using electricity illegally. There are so many people who are bridging the electricity. Man, there are so many things that we're doing. So I cannot really conclude that it's really racist, you know. I know I'm an activist, you know, I fight against white supremacy and all of that, but not everything is racist. We need to call out racism the way it is. We cannot reach, you know. There are many obvious instances of racism we can call out, and unfortunately this is not one of them. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, just like it, subscribe. If you disagree, just go to the comment section. All my socials, you know how it is. It's Lula Mendes in Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you want to go to my podcast, I'll link it below, and you know, we can have fun. But anyways, for now, sharp sharp.